Welcome to this explainer. Okay, so today we're tackling something that might sound a bit dry at first, but it is absolutely crucial. How do we objectively measure success in really complex, specialized roles? Specifically, we're looking at environmental impact assessment, or EIA experts. Look, whether you're mapping out massive management plans or crunching air quality data, pinning down a fair measure of actual performance is notoriously tricky. So today, we're going to break down exactly how the industry solves this puzzle using key result areas and key performance indicators. Here's a quick roadmap of our explainer today. We'll start by defining KRAs and KPIs, then look at the SMART criteria rule, how to set and track these goals, standard metrics for EIA experts, and finally, evaluating performance and ratings. Let's jump right in. All right, kicking things off with Section 1, defining KRAs and KPIs. I want you to picture this scenario for a second. You've got this incredibly talented functional area expert handling ecology and biodiversity for your firm. They are constantly busy, day in and day out. But how do you, as a manager or a quality control lead, actually measure their performance objectively when the end of the year rolls around? If you're just looking at a laundry list of activities they did, well, it's incredibly subjective. You might feel like they did a good job, but where's the actual proof? How do we strip away that subjectivity? Okay, let's dive into this. The answer starts with a KRA, which stands for Key Result Area. According to the organizational guidelines we're breaking down today, a KRA is basically the primary responsibilities of an individual. It's the core area where a person is held totally accountable. A great way to think about a KRA is that it's not the journey, it's the destination. It's the specific, tangible result the organization actually expects you to deliver.
To really get this, we kind of have to contrast it with the old way of doing things. A lot of people still view their jobs as just a list of day-to-day activities. I checked my emails, I went to a site visit, I had a client call. But activities are just a task-based checklist. They're highly subjective when you try to measure real value. Key results areas, on the other hand, care entirely about results. They are objective, accountable goals. You aren't getting graded on the fact that you typed a document, you're measured on the finalized environmental management plan that was actually submitted.
Actually, the performance guidelines hit the nail right on the head with this quote. Documented result areas provided us a path to tread. We know what results are expected from our work, and we perform accordingly. I love this because it perfectly highlights the psychology at play here. When you document these areas, the guesswork just vanishes, and the employee can take real ownership because the expectations are crystal clear. So if a KRA is our destination, how do we know we're actually on track to get there? Well, that is where the KPI steps in. A key performance indicator is a precise, self-explanatory, one-sentence definition of a measurable target. Basically, KPIs are the specific milestones we use to objectively evaluate if those broader KRAs are actually getting done within a set time frame. Moving right along to Section 2, the SMART criteria rule. You've probably heard of this framework before, but to be effective, the guidelines state that KRAs absolutely have to be SMART. This is a universally recognized rule in quality management systems. It stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And trust me, if your goal misses even one of these 5 criteria, trying to track it becomes a total nightmare. Let's break those down just a bit. Specific is pretty straightforward. It means unambiguous, no vague generalities allowed. Measurable means you need a concrete way to quantify it. Now, what's really interesting here is that measurement isn't always just a flat number or a percentage. The guidelines explicitly point out that measurement can also be done by qualitative judgment. For an EIA expert, that might mean hitting a strict completion date or even showing a measurable improvement in report quality that ties directly back to QMS audits. And that rolls right into the next criteria, achievable and relevant. Now, achievable doesn't mean easy. The guidelines talk about setting realistic targets that include what they call a stretch, a significant challenge meant to promote real growth. But they also have to be relevant, meaning they have to involve results that are largely within the expert's control. I mean, you can't fairly evaluate someone on a metric they have zero power to change, right? Finally, time-bound just means setting strict monthly milestones to make sure everything stays on track. Okay, Section 3, setting and tracking goals. Let's look at how this happens in the real world. So how does this actually work in practice? Well, right at the start of the financial year, a manager sits down for a joint discussion with their subordinate. First up, they list out the job responsibilities and pinpoint the areas most critical to success. Then they narrow it down to the vital few. Next, they look at baseline data to figure out where performance currently stands. They assign a weightage based on what's most important to the organization. And finally, they commit to sitting down for a strict monthly review to look at the plan versus achieved data. I really want to highlight step 2 here, focusing on the vital few. The guidelines strictly advise picking about 5 core KRAs. Why just 5? Well, because if you have 20 goals, you essentially have no goals. You end up getting lost in what the text calls the trivial many. By isolating just the top 5, an EIA coordinator knows exactly where to focus their energy. And to keep things fair, the baseline data is established by taking the monthly average of the previous year before they even decide on that new stretch target.
Bringing it all together in Section 4, Standard Metrics for EIA Experts. And this brilliantly illustrates how we turn all that management theory into cold, hard metrics. For the KRA of securing terms of reference from the ministry, the standard KPI is locked in at 3 projects per month. For baseline environmental monitoring, it's planning and implementing 2 projects per season. And for EIA and MEP report preparation, which we all know requires some heavy data interpretation, the KPI is finalizing 3 projects per quarter. Notice how specific, measurable, and perfectly time-bound every single one of those is. But it's not just about cranking out reports. These metrics also tie into the overall health of the entire organization. Take a look at these other KRAs. Securing environmental clearance to MAN's finalizing technical presentations for 2 projects a month. There are also KRAs for organizational growth, where an expert might have a KPI to literally increase turnover by 5%. And absolutely crucial in this industry, NABET accreditation. An expert is measured on their ability to keep their existing accreditation and successfully secure approval in brand new sectors or functional areas. Which brings us to our final stop, Section 5, Evaluating Performance and Ratings.
Okay, take a look at this number, 91%. So the crucial point here is that in this specific evaluation framework, just getting an 80 or 85% on your KPIs doesn't earn you top marks. To actually get rated as excellent, an expert has to hit a completion status of 91% or higher against those weighted KPIs. The bar for excellence is intentionally set incredibly high to push for constant improvement.
Here's how the whole system breaks down. A rating of A requires that 91 to 100% achievement we just talked about. Rating B, which is good, covers a pretty wide spread from 61 to 90%. Rating C is average for those hitting 41 to 60%. And anything 40% or below lands you in rating D, which is objectively classified as poor. Because this entire rating is based on those tracked KPIs, the manager and the employee are looking at pure data, not personal feelings or office politics.
And look, the stakes tied to these objective ratings are very real for the employee's career. At the bottom of the evaluation form, the manager has to make formal recommendations based entirely on that KPI data. Did the expert get an A? They could be marked suitable for promotion or line up for a salary increment. Did they get a C or D? The manager might have to select continue with memo or notice, or in cases of really severe underperformance against those agreed upon metrics, even terminate. The data completely removes the bias and dictates the career path. So as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a question to chew on. Are you just completing day-to-day activities, or are you actually taking ownership of your career through measurable results? By embracing key result areas and tracking them with solid key performance indicators, environmental experts don't just prove their worth to the boss, they take absolute control over their own professional growth. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into performance metrics. Keep striving for those stretch targets, and I'll see you in the next one.